Everyone knows that journalism is in crisis. So as newspapers fade and broadcast news is more and more recycled sound bites, high decibel shouting, and celebrity trivia, the responsibility for telling the truth about power increasingly falls on the shoulders of inquisitive and courageous filmmakers, independent filmmakers who answer only to their craft and conscience. Which is why I wanted to tell you about a documentary that's starting to appear in American movie theaters.
Donald Trump has arrived in Scotland to talk about his plans for what he claims will be the world's greatest golf course.
Well, Donald Trump swept into the northeast on his usual wave of publicity. His private jet touched down at Aberdeen.
It's the work of a journalist who has traveled all over the world reporting the news, then found the story of a lifetime in his own backyard, the ancient beaches of northeast Scotland.
Bullying ordinary people.
Anthony Baxter is his name, and by my lights, he's a hero. Against the odds, he stood up to a bully who was bulldozing the land and livelihoods of other people. If you want to get a look at what London's Sunday Times called the unacceptable face of capitalism, see this film. It's entitled, You've Been Trumped, as in Donald Trump, self-styled real estate tycoon, TV host, and on-again, off-again presidential candidate. We Americans are used to his inflated ego, his bombast and bravado. But when Trump swept into Scotland and announced his intention to build the most lavish, greatest golf course and resort in the world, many politicians and business leaders began dancing a Highland fling in greedy anticipation of Trump's promises and his fabled Midas touch, his past bankruptcy filings to the contrary. Environmental scientists warn that the sandy dunes across which Trump intended to extend his empire are a vital but delicate ecosystem as unique as the Amazon rainforest. Once the 4,000-year-old dunes are violated, chances are they're gone forever.
Multi-million-pound golf resort in Aberdeenshire is rejected.
Local authorities turned down Trump's grandiose proposal, but were overruled by the national Scottish government, which bought Trump's propaganda hook, line and sinker.
The Scottish government have called in the controversial planning application. Donald Trump's plans for a £1 billion golf development in Aberdeenshire will go ahead.
Officials took him at his word when Trump said the project would result in an estimated 6,000 new jobs. So far, fewer than 200 have been created. And as the Donald began digging, some of the locals refused to sell him their land, much to his annoyance. They failed to take his customary, "You're fired," as an order. And that's how the filmmaker and journalist Anthony Baxter became part of this story. Anthony Baxter, welcome.
Thank you.
How did you come upon this story?
Well, I live very near to it. I live in a town called Montrose, which is about 40 miles south. And when I heard about this story, I was very struck by the fact that the local newspapers were just reporting that this was going to be a fantastic economic benefit for the area. Nobody seemed to be questioning him about the very real environmental impact that this development was going to have. And that struck me as really worrying, because the real questions were primarily about the environmental impact, but also about the local people, ordinary people whose homes were threatened with, as you call it here, eminent domain. They were threatened with compulsory purchase, as we call it in Britain.
In other words, they could be forced to leave their homes if the council agrees to the developer's plans.
Exactly. He wanted to buy their properties so that you didn't see their houses. He wanted to build over them. And he made a great thing about saying, I'm going to build the greatest golf course in the world. But of course, if you have houses in the footprint of the golf course, it's difficult to see how it can be the greatest golf course in the world. So he wanted to get rid of those houses. Those people didn't want to sell to him. They'd lived there all their lives. They had no intention of moving. They had become, in a way, guardians of that environment. They're people who care very deeply about those natural dunes, those unique sand dunes, and that wild open space.
Tell me about Michael Forbes. He's one of them, and he becomes a true character in your film. Who is he?
Well, Michael Forbes is a fisherman farmer who has a farm in the footprint of the golf course, if you like. So really what Donald Trump wanted to do was buy that property.
Trump actually tells the press in your film that Michael Forbes is not a respected man. I'm quoting directly, not someone Scotland can be proud of.
His property is terribly maintained. It's slum-like. It's disgusting. He's got stuff thrown all over the place. He lives like a pig, and I did say that. And I'm an honest guy, and I speak honestly, and I think that's why some people like me and some people probably don't like me. But I think he'd do himself a great service if he fixed up his property. And I'm not talking money. It's not a question of money. It's a question of a little manual labor.
Well, when I heard that, I, like everybody else in Scotland, assumed Michael Forbes lived in this shack on the beach and was being just not allowing development to progress. And so I thought that, because that was the picture that was painted in the media. So I drove up and I couldn't believe it. When I got to Michael Forbes's farm and I spoke to him and his wife, Sheila, and Molly, his mother, and they were the most lovely people. And the farm was like any other working farm in Scotland. There was no, Mr. Trump had said, I can't build my hotel because people looking out of the hotel will look into this pigsty and they'll see this slum. But the fact is that the farm was nothing different from any other work.
Looks like a farm in Oklahoma where I was
Absolutely.
born.
Get it done, and don't spend a lot.
It's all on Donald J. Trump's fabulous world of golf.
Sarah, I want to get rid of that house.
It's going to create a bit of a stir, but if we're all...
Who cares? Who cares? You know what? Who cares? It's our property. We can do what we want. We're trying to build the greatest course in the world. This house is ugly. There are some houses quite far away from the course, but nevertheless, they are in view. But we are berming some of the areas so that you don't see the houses. I don't want to see the houses. And nobody has a problem with it. I guess maybe the people that live in the houses have.
He wanted to buy the other properties, David Milne and Susan Monroe, who are featured in the film.
And later on in the film, you show how the Trump organization piles the sand up into barriers so that the people who are going to be, the golfers, would not be able to see their house.
I got out of my bed this morning, the whole house shaking, things falling off Finlay's shelf. But this is getting bigger by the day. It's just incredibly high now.
Did you ask the builders what they were doing with this?
Finlay did.
What did they say?
It's Mr. Trump's instructions.
Mr. Trump's instructions?
Yeah.
To put all this earth
Yeah.
in?
Yeah, to block our view, to harass us, obviously. There are no bank on the plans, anything like that. Oh, I don't know what to do.
I don't know what it's for. I don't even know what the mound of mold's for. It's harassment for David Mel up here. They're pushing the mold off the field to block off his view or whatever. Why did they do it there? The whole field that they could have put the mold in.
It's rather meaningless. It took them maybe a week, 10 days to actually construct. So there's quite a lot of work involved, there's a lot of time involved, there's a lot of effort involved for no real purpose.